They shattered my phone right in front of everyone at the family party, and my aunt smirked, adding good discipline like I was some 12-year-old child needing correction. But they had no idea I worked at North River Credit Union, that every text, every photo, every damning piece of evidence about their dirty little secrets had already uploaded to my cloud. They thought breaking a phone would break me too. That night, I started planning something that would leave the entire family speechless, and by the time I was done, they'd learn what real discipline looked like. My name is Elena Hart, and I've spent the last 15 years building a life my parents couldn't control. At 34, I analyze fraud patterns at North River Credit Union, live in my own condo, and answer to no one. But somehow, every family gathering pulls me back into their twisted hierarchy like I'm still that scared teenager they used to humiliate for sport. The text came at 3:45 p.m. On a Saturday, Grandpa's birthday dinner. 6 sharp. Don't embarrass us by being late again. My mother, Caroline Ward, had a gift for making commands sound like death threats wrapped in suburban politeness. I was already running late, bent over my laptop at the office, untangling a web of suspicious wire transfers that screamed money laundering, the kind of thing that couldn't wait until Monday. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway in Maple Ridge at 6:10 p.m., I could see the silhouettes of relatives through the dining room window, already seated, already judging. The moment I walked in, the atmosphere shifted. My father, Ray Ward, stood at the head of the table like a general surveying his troops. My mother sat to his right, her face a mask of controlled fury. And there, next to her, sat my Aunt Maureen Pike, my mother's older sister, whose thin-lipped smile promised trouble. "Nice of you to join us," Caroline said, her voice dripping honey over broken glass. "Too busy to respect your grandfather's special day." "I was at work. Fraud emergency." I kept my voice level, taking the only empty seat naturally, the one facing all of them like a defendant in court. "Work." Maureen drew out the word like it tasted bad. "That's always your excuse, isn't it? Some of us prioritize family." Her daughter Brianna, 28 and still living off her parents while pretending to be an influencer, snickered from across the table. She held up her phone, probably already crafting some passive-aggressive post about family values. Dinner proceeded with the usual interrogation disguised as conversation. Why wasn't I married yet? Why did I insist on that dangerous job at the bank? Why couldn't I be more like Brianna, who understood the importance of family bonds? Then Caroline dropped the bomb. "Give me your phone," she said suddenly, extending her hand across the table. "Excuse me. Your phone. You've been glancing at it throughout dinner. It's disrespectful. You need to learn how to properly engage with your family." "I'm 34 years old, Mom. You don't get to confiscate my phone." Ray's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. "In this house, you follow our rules." "Then I'll leave." I started to rise, but Ray moved faster than I expected for a man his age. His hand shot out and grabbed my phone from beside my plate. "Give it back." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You need to learn respect," he said, holding my phone up like evidence in a trial. "All this technology has made you forget how to be part of this family." Maureen leaned forward, her eyes glittering with anticipation. "Sometimes children need reminders, no matter how old they are." That's when it happened. Ray held my phone in both hands and, with a sudden, violent motion, snapped it in half. The crack echoed through the dining room. Pieces of glass from the screen scattered across my grandmother's heirloom tablecloth. The room went silent except for Grandpa's confused mumbling from the end of the table. Everyone else watched, waiting for my reaction. Maureen's smirk widened. "Good discipline," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sometimes you have to break things to make a point." Caroline nodded approvingly. "In this house, discipline comes before emotions. Always has, always will." I stared at the destroyed phone, my work device, containing active case files, evidence logs, personal photos, health records, everything. They thought they'd won. They thought this was just another power play in their sick game of control, but as I looked at their satisfied faces, something cold and calculating clicked into place in my mind. They had no idea what they'd just started. No idea that every piece of data on that phone was already backed up to the cloud. No idea that their perfect little world was built on foundations I could destroy with a few well-placed truth bombs. "You're right," I said quietly, gathering the broken pieces of my phone. "Sometimes you do have to break things to make a point." This wasn't the first time they'd tried to break me. The pattern started when I was 14, the day Caroline found my diary hidden under my mattress. She didn't just read it, she brought it to Sunday dinner and recited my most private thoughts aloud, including my crush on a boy from algebra class. "We don't keep secrets in this family," she'd said while Maureen applauded her transparency in parenting. At 16, they'd thrown away my college applications to out-of-state schools while I was at a debate tournament. "You belong here, with family," Ray had explained, as if destroying my future was an act of love. I had to secretly reapply, forge their signatures, and work 3 jobs to pay the application fees they refused to cover. When I was 19 and finally escaped to college, they changed the locks on the house. Not because they didn't want me back, but because they wanted me to beg for the privilege of entering. "Independence has a price," Caroline had said, making me stand on the porch for an hour on Christmas Eve before letting me in. At 22, fresh out of college and staying with them for just 3 days while apartment hunting, Ray presented me with an itemized bill, $300 for utilities, food, and emotional labor. He actually used those words, emotional labor, like loving your child was a billable service. Through it all, Maureen was there as Caroline's cheerleader, her witness, her enforcer. "Your mother knows best," she'd say. "Children these days have no respect," she'd add. "Elena needs a firm hand," she'd conclude, usually while Brianna sat beside her, absorbing every toxic lesson. And Brianna learned well. At family gatherings, she'd accidentally post unflattering photos of me online with captions like, "Some people never learn to dress properly," "Fashion fail, pray for her," or she'd invent stories about my dating life, telling relatives I was going through a phase or confused about what she wants. Once, she created a fake dating profile using my photos and work information, then acted shocked when I got creepy messages from strangers. "It's just a joke, Elena," Maureen would say whenever I complained. "Don't be so sensitive. Brianna's just trying to help you lighten up." The financial manipulation was perhaps the most insidious. When I was 25 and got my first promotion at the credit union, they suddenly remembered I existed. Ray started asking about investment opportunities that sounded suspiciously like pyramid schemes. Caroline hinted that good daughters help their families. When I refused, they told everyone at the next holiday gathering that I was selfish with my success and forgot where she came from. They'd even tried to use my grandfather against me, the sweet, confused old man whose birthday we were supposedly celebrating tonight. They'd tell him I never called, never visited, when in reality they'd blocked my number on his phone and told me he was too fragile for visitors. Only when I showed up unannounced did I learn the truth. The control never stopped, just evolved. Group texts where they'd discuss my problems and solutions without including me. Family meetings about my attitude that I'd learn about secondhand from cousins. Surprise interventions about everything from my career choice to my hairstyle. Every time I pulled away, they'd find a new hook. A family emergency that wasn't real. A guilt trip about breaking my mother's heart. A threat to write me out of wills I never wanted to be in anyway. And through 15 years of this, one thing remained constant: Maureen's smirk and her little comments. She needs discipline. Sometimes tough love is the only love that works. You can't let them think they're independent. Tonight's phone breaking wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of 2 decades of systematic attempts to keep me small, dependent, and afraid. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about respect and family hierarchy. but as I drove away from that house with the broken pieces of my phone in my pocket, I finally understood something they never would. They hadn't been disciplining me all these years. They'd been teaching me exactly who they really were. And now, with all the resources of my profession at my disposal, I was going to return the favor. I made it to my condo by 7:30 p.m., my hands finally stopping their shaking as I set the broken phone pieces on my kitchen counter. The familiar silence of my own space wrapped around me like armor. No sneering aunts, no controlling parents, no toxic cousins documenting my every move for social media mockery. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. The beauty of working in financial fraud detection. You become paranoid about data loss. Everything on my phone, every photo, every message, every note automatically backed up to 3 different cloud services. Real-time syncing. Military-grade encryption. They'd destroyed hardware worth $800. But the data was eternal. My iMessage app pinged to life on the MacBook screen. Text threads stretching back years appeared in perfect chronological order, including the interesting ones. The ones where Ray discussed his side business with suppliers. The ones where Caroline bragged to her book club friends about claiming fraudulent deductions on their taxes. The ones where Maureen admitted she'd been skimming from the estate sale of my grandmother's sister last year. But it was the recent stuff that made me sit up straighter. 3 weeks ago, I'd helped Ray with his computer when he claimed it had a virus. While fixing it, I'd noticed unusual transfers from his business account to something called Ward Home Improvements LLC. I'd taken screenshots, thinking it was odd but not my business. Now, those screenshots gleamed on my backup drive like golden evidence. I pulled up the Ring doorbell footage from my parents' house they'd given me access years ago during one of their We're Family phases, probably forgetting I still had it. Last Tuesday at 11:43 p.m., a van had pulled up. Someone delivered boxes that Ray signed for using. I zoomed in Brianna's name. The shipping labels were partially visible. The return address was from a wholesale electronics distributor known for selling gray market goods. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up public records for Ward Home Improvements LLC. No contractor's license on file with the state. No business insurance. But plenty of receipts. 5 neighbors in Maple Ridge had filed complaints about paying deposits for work never started. $7,000 here, $5,000 there. All cash. All untraceable except for the angry Facebook posts I found in the local community group. The Westford Secretary of State website confirmed what I suspected the LLC was registered, but its annual report was 3 years overdue. It was technically dissolved, yet still taking money. That wasn't just shady, it was fraud. I opened another tab and logged into the professional database we used at the credit union. I couldn't access customer accounts without cause, but public filing searches completely legal. Ray's name popped up on 3 mechanics' liens. Caroline had a judgment from a boutique she'd stiffed on a custom furniture order. And Maureen's 6 small claims court cases, all settled quietly out of court. But Brianna's digital footprint was the most damning. Her lifestyle coaching website used my photos edited, of course, to make me look worse while she looked better. Before and after transformations, where I was the before. Client testimonials that used my real first name and fabricated struggles with poor life choices and toxic independence that Brianna had supposedly fixed. The copyright infringement alone was actionable. The defamation was worse. But the kicker. She was charging $200 for consultation packages and had a Venmo account showing at least 40 transactions this month. No business license. No reported income. The IRS would find that very interesting. I counted to 10, feeling the rage transform into something colder, more calculated. They'd humiliated me in front of the entire family, broken my property. Maureen had called it good discipline while others watched and said nothing. Fine. Let me show them what real discipline looked like. I created a new folder on my desktop, Operation Broken Glass. Subfolder 1, Financial Crimes. Subfolder 2, Civil Violations. Subfolder 3, Defamation and Fraud. Subfolder 4, Tax Issues. Methodically, I began organizing everything: screenshots, downloads, public records, social media posts, every piece of evidence sorted and labeled with dates, times, and sources. The kind of package that prosecutors and civil attorneys dream about: neat, thorough, and devastating. By 9:15 p.m., I had 63 pages of documentation. By 10, I'd identified 12 distinct violations of state and federal law between the four of them. They thought breaking my phone would break me. They thought I'd cry, beg, apologize, fall back in line like I had as a teenager. They thought they still had power over me. Tomorrow, I'd start making calls: lawyers, investigators, maybe even a few reporters who covered consumer fraud for the Westford Gazette. But tonight, I sat back with my wine and smiled at the screen. Good discipline. I repeated Maureen's words to the empty room. Sometimes you really do have to break things to make a point. Monday morning at 8 sharp, I sat in the law office of Marla Keegan, one of Westford's most respected family attorneys. She specialized in cases involving financial abuse and family property disputes, exactly what I needed. They physically destroyed your phone in front of witnesses. Marla's eyebrows rose as she reviewed my documentation. And this aunt of yours said good discipline. How many people heard this? 12 family members, including my elderly grandfather. I slid her the printed screenshots of the family group chat where 3 cousins had discussed the incident afterward, calling it intense but necessary. Destruction of property, potential assault since your father grabbed it from you forcefully, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Marla made notes on her legal pad. The value of the phone plus data loss could push this into felony territory, and you have all this backed up, everything, plus evidence of ongoing harassment going back years. We can file for a restraining order if you want, but I'm thinking bigger: civil suit for damages, emotional distress, and... She paused, looking at the Ward Home Improvements documents. This is fraud, consumer fraud, tax fraud, operating without licenses. Has anyone reported this? Not yet. I wanted legal counsel first. Smart. I'll draft the civil complaint today. Filing fee is $350, and my retainer is $5,000. Worth it. Absolutely. By 10:30 a.m., I was at the Maple Ridge Police Department, filing a formal report with Officer Diana Reeves. She took my statement about the phone incident, photographed the broken device, and assigned a case number. Domestic property destruction, she said, typing. With your father being the primary aggressor and your aunt as an accomplice through encouragement. You want to press charges. I want it documented. My attorney will advise on criminal charges. Good approach. Here's your case number. You'll need it for insurance and civil proceedings. Next stop: the Westford Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. The receptionist directed me to Investigator Thomas Park, who specialized in contractor fraud. Ward Home Improvements, LLC. He pulled up his computer records. We've had 3 complaints already, but insufficient evidence to proceed. This, he gestured to my folder of evidence, changes everything: bank records, testimonies, proof of dissolved status while still operating. This is exactly what we need. There are at least 5 victims in Maple Ridge alone, I said. I have their names and contact information from the community Facebook group. If you can get them to file formal complaints, we can pursue criminal charges: theft by deception, operating without a license, fraud over $5,000. Your father could be looking at serious time. The IRS tip line was next. Brianna's unreported income, Ray's suspicious business transfers, Caroline's boasted tax evasion, all submitted online with supporting documentation. Reference number provided, investigation pending. But the most satisfying stop was my 3 p.m. meeting with Marcus Chen from the Westford Gazette. He'd broken the story about a similar contractor scam last year and was hungry for another expose. A respected family running a fraud scheme while maintaining a spotless public image. His eyes lit up. And you're the daughter they tried to silence. This is front-page material. I'm not talking to press yet, I clarified. But when the legal proceedings start, you'll have the exclusive. I just want you ready. I'll start background research on the LLC and public records. When you're ready, I'm all in. By evening, I'd assembled my legal team and strategy. Marla would handle the civil suit property destruction, emotional distress, defamation through Brianna's website. The AG's office would pursue the criminal fraud investigation. The IRS would handle tax evasion. And Officer Reeves had the assault and destruction of property charges ready if I chose to proceed. But I wasn't done. I reached out to Jenny Morrison, Ray's biggest victim, a widow who'd lost $8,000 for a bathroom renovation that never happened. "He seemed so trustworthy," she said over the phone. "Talked about family values and integrity. I felt too embarrassed to pursue it legally." "Would you be willing to give a statement, possibly testify? If it stops him from doing this to others, absolutely." 4 more victims agreed to come forward. Their combined losses totaled $37,000. I looked at my evidence board. Yes, I'd made an actual board like in crime shows, with strings connecting all the players and their crimes. At the center was the destroyed phone, photographed and preserved in an evidence bag. Ray thought he was the patriarch, the untouchable head of household. Caroline believed her social standing protected her. Maureen assumed her snide cruelty was just family dynamics. And Brianna figured her online schemes were too small to matter. They were all wrong. I opened my laptop and checked the family group chat I still had access to through my Mac. They were planning a reconciliation BBQ next Sunday, discussing how to bring Elena back into line. Perfect. Let them think they were in control. Let them believe I was defeated. Next Sunday, they'd learn what happened when you broke something that belonged to someone who professionally investigated fraud for a living. The phone had been worth $800. The coming lawsuits would cost them hundreds of thousands, and their reputation priceless to them. Worthless once I was done. "Good discipline," I whispered, adding the final victim statement to my file. The plan came together like a complex fraud investigation, multiple moving parts, each timed perfectly to create maximum impact. I called it Operation Lights Out because I was about to shine a spotlight on every dark corner of their lives. Layer 1 legal pressure. Marla had filed the civil suit Tuesday morning, seeking $50,000 in damages for property destruction, emotional distress, and years of documented harassment. The papers would be served publicly. I specifically requested service during the family BBQ. Nothing said accountability like being handed legal documents in front of your social circle. Layer 2, financial consequences. I'd contacted Ray's credit card companies as a concerned fraud analyst, flagging suspicious transactions with vendor companies that didn't seem to exist. While I couldn't access his accounts directly, I could suggest they review charges to wholesale direct supply and premium construction goods, both shell companies I'd tracked through public records. The banks would freeze first, investigate second. I'd also prepared a suspicious activity report for my bank's system. Not on Ray directly, that would be unethical without cause, but on the vendor companies he'd been paying. Once filed, the information would flow to the appropriate federal agencies. Clean, legal, devastating. Layer 3, social exposure. Jenny Morrison and the other victims had formed a group. We'd created a shared document detailing their experiences with Ward Home Improvements LLC. Jenny, brave soul that she was, planned to attend the BBQ. Ray had mentioned the family gathering when he'd taken her deposit, saying his house was always open to valued clients. She was about to take him up on that offer. The other victims would wait in their cars nearby, ready to join if needed. All legal, a public gathering at a house where they'd been previously invited by the homeowner himself. Layer 4, digital evidence display. I'd prepared a presentation on my new phone. Every screenshot, every fraudulent transaction, every piece of evidence organized into a clean, professional slideshow. If they wanted to discuss family matters, I'd give them full transparency. But the masterpiece was the recording. Massachusetts was a 2-party consent state for recording, but Westford followed single-party rules. I could legally record any conversation I was part of. My new phone would capture every word of the confrontation, Wednesday through Friday. I refined each element. I consulted with my bank's legal team about whistleblower protections, ensuring my reports on the shell companies couldn't backfire. I helped Jenny rehearse her confrontation with Ray, keeping it factual, calm, and legally sound. I also reached out to 3 family members I still trusted, cousins who'd witnessed years of abuse but stayed silent out of fear. "I'm not asking you to take sides," I told them. "Just don't leave when things get interesting on Sunday." My cousin Michael responded first. "About time someone stood up to them. I'll bring my phone. Video evidence might help." "Right. As long as you're recording in a public space or with consent," I said. "The backyard is visible from the street. Fair game." Friday afternoon, Brianna made a critical mistake. She posted on Instagram, transforming another client's disaster life. Check my website for the amazing before-after story of E, from bitter bank worker to balanced boss babe. The post included 3 of my photos, edited to look haggard and miserable, alongside fake after photos of a model who looked nothing like me. The defamation was clear, the copyright infringement undeniable, and she'd just given me fresh evidence. I screenshot everything, then had Marla file an emergency amendment to our civil suit, adding Brianna as a defendant with her own charges: defamation per se, copyright infringement, false advertising, and fraud. The damages request jumped to $75,000. Saturday night, I called Caroline with my RSVP for the BBQ. "Oh, Elena," she said, her voice dripping false warmth. "We're so glad you've come to your senses. Tomorrow we can discuss your behavior and move forward as a family." "I'll be there at 2 p.m., I said. "And Mom, I'm bringing some documentation you'll want to see." "Documentation?" Her tone sharpened. "About the family business. Dad mentioned wanting my professional opinion on some financial matters." The pause stretched. "I see. Well, family business stays in the family." "Of course. That's why I'm bringing everything to share with the family. Full transparency, just like you taught me." I could practically hear her grinding her teeth. 2 o'clock then. The process server was scheduled for 2:30 p.m. The victims would arrive at 2:45. By 3 p.m., their entire world would be collapsing. I spent Sunday morning at the office, printing binding copies of evidence for everyone who'd be there, 40-page packets containing the destroyed phone incident with witness statements, ward home improvements victims' testimonies, banking irregularities and tax issues, Brianna's fraud website screenshots, years of documented emotional abuse. Each packet sealed in an envelope, labeled with a family member's name. Even Grandpa would get one, simplified to what he could understand. At 1:45 p.m., I sat in my car outside my parents' house, watching guests arrive for what they thought was a normal family BBQ. The stage was set. The evidence was ready. The truth was about to hit them like a federal investigation, because that's what real discipline looked like: not breaking someone's property in a fit of rage, but methodically dismantling the system that enabled the abuse. The backyard was perfect for their purposes, string lights creating a warm ambiance, the buffet table laden with Caroline's signature dishes, and Maureen holding court near the drink station, her thin smile already in place. 23 family members mingled on the lawn, the picture of suburban harmony. I walked through the gate at exactly 2 p.m., my new phone visible in my hand, the evidence packets in a leather briefcase. Conversations stuttered to a stop. Maureen's smile widened predatorily. "Look who learned her lesson," she announced to everyone. "Sometimes a little tough love works wonders." I set my briefcase on the picnic table and placed my phone beside it, screen up, recording app silently running. "Actually, Aunt Maureen, I wanted to thank you for last week. Your comment about good discipline really opened my eyes." Caroline approached, her hostess mask firmly in place. "Elena, dear, let's not discuss unpleasantness. This is a family celebration." "Of course. But first, I brought something for everyone." I opened my briefcase and began distributing the sealed envelopes. "Considerate transparency. You always said we shouldn't keep secrets in this family." Ray intercepted me before I could hand out more than 3. "What is this?" "Documentation about Ward Home Improvements, LLC. You wanted my professional opinion, remember. His face flushed. We'll discuss business later, privately. But Dad, you always said family business involves the whole family. I pulled out my phone and opened the presentation. For instance, did everyone know that Ward Home Improvements has taken $37,000 in deposits for work never performed? The backyard went silent except for the distant sound of a lawnmower. That's a lie, Caroline snapped. Ray's business is completely legitimate. Really? I swiped to the next slide showing the dissolved LLC status. Because according to state records, the company hasn't been legal for 3 years. Yet, just last month, Mrs. Morrison paid $8,000 for a bathroom renovation. Right on cue. Jenny Morrison walked through the gate at 2:30 p.m., 5 minutes early but perfectly timed. She wore her Sunday best and carried a folder of her own. Mr. Ward, she said, her voice carrying across the yard. I've been trying to reach you about my bathroom. It's been 4 months since I paid you. Ray's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Caroline stepped forward. This is a private gathering. He invited me, Jenny said calmly. Told me his door was always open to valued clients. I have the text message right here. Behind her, 4 more victims filed into the yard. Mr. Peterson with his unfinished deck. The Johnsons with their stolen kitchen deposit. Each carrying documentation. Each wearing the determined expression of people who'd been pushed too far. This is ambush, Maureen shrieked. Elena, how dare you? How dare I what? I pulled up the video from last week. How dare I have evidence of assault and property destruction? The video played on my phone, volume turned up, Ray breaking my phone, the crack echoing, and then, crystal clear. Maureen's voice, good discipline. My cousin Michael had his phone out, recording everything. 2 other cousins did the same. The family members who'd received envelopes were opening them, gasps rippling through the group as they saw the evidence. You recorded us! Caroline's voice went shrill. In our own home. The dining room is visible from the street through your windows. No expectation of privacy. But don't worry, the process server will explain all the legal details. As if summoned, a man in a polo shirt walked through the gate carrying a thick manila envelope. I'm looking for Ray Ward, Caroline Ward, and Maureen Pike. They stood frozen as he approached. You're being served with a civil lawsuit for assault, destruction of property, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation. He handed them each their copy, then turned to scan the crowd. Is Brianna Pike here? Brianna, who'd been trying to edge toward the house, froze as all eyes turned to her. The process server walked over and handed her an envelope. You're being served for defamation, copyright infringement, fraud, and false advertising. This is insane, Ray roared. Get off my property! Actually, Officer Diana Reeves said, entering the yard in full uniform, I need to speak with you about case number 2024-8975. Multiple complaints of fraud have been filed. I'm not here to arrest anyone yet, but I strongly suggest you contact a lawyer. The backyard erupted, family members demanding explanations, victims listing their grievances, Maureen screeching about family loyalty while Brianna frantically tried to delete her Instagram posts. Caroline grabbed my arm. You vindictive little careful, I said, holding up my phone still recording. Assault charges are so much worse with video evidence. She released me, her face contorting with rage. You've destroyed this family. No, I said clearly, making sure everyone could hear. You destroyed a phone. You destroyed my childhood. You destroyed these people's trust and stole their money. All I did was shine a light on it. Sss, Grandpa, confused but understanding something important was happening, spoke up from his chair. Elena visits me every week at the home. None of you do. She's a good girl. The revelation rippled through the crowd. The narrative of the negligent daughter crumbled in real time. The Attorney General's office will be in touch, I announced to Ray. The IRS, too. And Brianna, my lawyer, will be sending a cease and desist for using my photos. Take them down now, or the damage is triple." The chaos in the backyard suddenly sharpened into deadly focus when Ray's phone rang. He answered it on speaker by accident in his fumbling panic. "Mr. Ward, this is Samantha Cross from First National Bank. We're calling about suspicious activity on your business credit card. Several vendors you've been paying appear to be shell companies. We're freezing the account pending investigation." The color drained from his face. "You can't just freeze my accounts." "Sir, we've received multiple flags from the Fraud Prevention Network. Wholesale direct supply premium construction goods. Neither company exists at their listed addresses. We need you to come in Monday morning with documentation for all transactions over $5,000 in the past year." Caroline snatched the phone. "This is harassment. My husband is a respected businessman." "Ma'am, this is standard procedure when potential fraud is detected. We've also been contacted by the Attorney General's office." "Good day." The line went dead. In the silence that followed, Thomas Park from the Consumer Protection Division walked through the gate, having waited for the perfect moment. "Mr. Ward," he said, holding up his badge, "I'm here to inform you that based on evidence provided and corroborated by 5 victims, the state is opening a formal investigation into Ward Home Improvements, LLC. Operating a dissolved company while taking deposits is fraud. Each transaction over $5,000 is a separate felony charge." "5 victims!" Ray's voice cracked. Jenny Morrison stepped forward. "6. Actually, Mrs. Chin from Oak Street just texted me. She's filing tomorrow. That's another $12,000 you stole." I pulled up my phone and showed the next slide a spreadsheet of all known victims, amounts, and dates. "Actually, Dad, based on public records and community complaints, you're looking at approximately $73,000 in theft. That's 15 to 20 years if convicted on all counts." Maureen tried to storm toward me, but Officer Reeves stepped between us. "Ma'am, I suggest you calm down." "She's destroying her own father," Maureen shrieked. "No," I said, pulling up banking records on my phone. "But speaking of destruction, Aunt Maureen, should we discuss the $18,000 that disappeared from Great Aunt Ruth's estate sale? The one you managed?" Maureen went white. How did you transaction records? You transferred it to your personal account, then claimed the sale only made $5,000. Felony theft, elder financial abuse since Ruth had dementia. That's another 10 years. Brianna was frantically deleting her website on her phone, but I held up mine. Too late. Everything's been archived and sent to my attorney. Every fake testimonial using my photos. Every fraudulent transformation story. And this morning, I found out you've been claiming to be a licensed therapist in your coaching materials. That's a criminal misdemeanor in Westford. "It's just marketing," Brianna whined. "It's fraud. And the 68 clients who paid you, they'll all be notified by mail this week. Class action lawsuits are expensive. Brianna..." Caroline stood in the center of the chaos, her perfect hostess facade cracking. "You're our daughter. How could you do this? The same way you read my diary aloud at dinner, publicly, thoroughly, without mercy." I pulled up the next slide, her tax returns. "Should we discuss the home office deduction for a room you use for storage or the charitable donations you claimed but never made the IRS loves those?" Ray lunged toward my phone, but Michael and 2 other cousins blocked him. "That's enough." "Uncle Ray," Michael said, "you've broken enough phones." The process server returned with one final envelope. Approaching Caroline. "Mrs. Ward, this is from Rosewood Boutique. They're suing for the custom furniture you never paid for. $3,000 plus interest and legal fees." As Caroline took the envelope with shaking hands, more family members started leaving, distancing themselves from the unfolding disaster. But Jenny Morrison and the other victims stood firm, finally seeing justice begin. "Here's what happens next," I announced, my voice cutting through the chaos. "You have 72 hours to return every cent to these victims, or the criminal charges proceed. The Attorney General has the evidence. Officer Reeves has the assault case. The IRS has your tax fraud. And my attorney has the civil suits ready. But if we pay," Ray started. You'll avoid criminal charges for the fraud, maybe, but the civil suits continue. The tax investigation continues, and the dissolution of your illegal company is mandatory. I pulled out a printed document from my briefcase. This is a settlement agreement. Sign it. Pay the victims in full by Thursday at 5 p.m., and the criminal fraud charges might be dropped to misdemeanors. Refuse, and face the full weight of the law. This is extortion, Caroline screamed. This is consequence, Officer Reeves corrected. Your daughter is offering you a better deal than the state will. Thomas Park nodded. Take the deal. My office won't be as generous. As Ray reached for the papers with trembling hands, I delivered the final blow. Oh, and the $37,000 you stole. My attorney calculates that with penalties, interest, and damages. You're looking at about $150,000 in civil judgments. Better start liquidating assets. Maureen's famous smirk had completely vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed horror as she realized her own crimes were exposed. Elena, please. Good discipline, I said, looking her straight in the eye. Sometimes you have to break things to make a point. Right. The backyard had become a courtroom, and I was prosecutor, judge, and jury all at once. The string lights swayed in the breeze, casting shifting shadows across faces twisted with rage, fear, and disbelief. Caroline stood in the center of it all, her perfectly styled hair disheveled, her hostess smile replaced by a snarl. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. For the first time in my life, my mother had no words. Sign the agreements, I said, placing the settlement papers on the picnic table. Admit wrongdoing, pay restitution, apologize. Apologize, Ray's voice cracked. You want us to apologize. Publicly, in writing. To me, to these victims, to the family members you've embarrassed with your crimes. Maureen grabbed the papers, her hands shaking. This says I have to admit to theft from Ruth's estate. Because you did steal from Ruth's estate. It says I can never comment about you publicly or privately, except in positive terms. Consider it a restraining order for your mouth. Caroline read her portion, her face growing redder with each line. Public apology in the Westford Gazette admission of destroying your property. A written statement that I was wrong to violate your privacy for 20 years. Every diary entry you read aloud, every secret you exposed, every moment you tried to break me down. It ends today. Brianna was crying now, mascara streaming down her face. My business, my followers. Built on my images, my name, my stolen life. It's over. Brianna. Ray signed first, his hand trembling so badly the signature was barely legible. The pen dropped from his fingers like it weighed 100 pounds. One by one, the others signed, each signature a surrender, each page turn an admission of defeat. Jenny Morrison and the other victims watched with grim satisfaction. They'd waited months for this moment, and it was sweeter than any of them had imagined. The checks, I said. Write them now. Every victim gets paid today. We don't have that much in checking, Caroline protested. Then transfer from savings, liquidate investments, sell Brianna's Mercedes. I don't care how you get it, but these people leave here with their money. It took 40 minutes of phone calls to banks, investment firms, and credit unions. 40 minutes of Ray and Caroline draining accounts they'd filled with stolen money. 40 minutes of Maureen transferring funds she'd hidden for years. 40 minutes of Brianna watching her influencer dreams crumble into check after check written to pay back her victims. When the last check was written, when the last victim had their money in hand, I stood before my family one final time. You broke my phone thinking it would silence me. You called it good discipline, believing you could still control me like I was 12 years old. But I'm not 12 anymore. I'm a fraud investigator who knows every trick you've ever pulled and has the evidence to prove it. I picked up my new phone, the recording still running, and held it up for everyone to see. This device has captured everything, every admission, every signature, every crime confessed. The cloud storage is automatic, backed up in real time, You can never delete this. You can never escape this. Maureen stepped forward, her signature smirk finally attempting a comeback. You think you've won? You've destroyed your own family? No, I said calmly. I've revealed what this family really was. Thieves, fraudsters, abusers. The destruction was already there, hidden under Sunday dinners and holiday cards. I looked at Caroline directly. You taught me that discipline comes before emotions. You were right. My discipline in gathering evidence came before my emotions about losing my family. Thank you for the lesson. Then to Ray. You said respect must be earned. I agree. You've earned exactly the respect you deserve none. Finally, to Maureen. You said sometimes you have to break things to make a point. The point has been made. I picked up my briefcase and turned to leave. At the gate, I paused and delivered my final words without looking back. The restraining orders go into effect tomorrow. Don't contact me. Don't speak about me. Don't even think about me. If you violate any terms of the settlement, the criminal charges return with interest. Michael and several other cousins followed me out, offering their support, their apologies for years of silence, but I barely heard them. I was already free. As I walked to my car, I heard Caroline's voice one last time, broken and small. Elena, please. I didn't turn around. I didn't respond. I simply got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing in the wreckage of their own making, the string lights still twinkling over a family that had finally learned what discipline really meant. My phone buzzed with a text from Marla Keegan. Just saw the signed agreements come through. Brilliant work. They'll never bother you again. I deleted the text, then deleted every family contact from my phone except Grandpa. The broken pieces of my old phone sat in an evidence bag on my passenger seat, the $800 device that had cost them everything. Good discipline, I said to myself one last time, then smiled as I drove toward my new life, completely and permanently free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story of standing up to toxic family resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts and experiences. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to hear what you think.